Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm making another video response to the username Ahmed's Quran 3. This video is entitled Quran Against Jews Part 16. So I made another list and I'm going to refute his points again. His first point is that he mentions in Ibn Asak's Surat Rasulullah, the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, that many of the Jews rejected him. And he makes a big deal about this. He says that the Jews mocked Muhammad and things of this nature. And I would like to just point out that there were many Jews who accepted Muhammad as a prophet, and accepted him at least as a commander, as a legislative individual who was in charge of Medina. In fact, it was the Jewish tribes, the pagan tribes, and the Christian Arab tribes who actually first invited Muhammad to Medina to be the arbiter amongst their tribes, and that's when they established the covenant of Medina, or the agreement of Medina, that all the tribes would come together and help each other. But as we know through history, some of the Jews did reject him and ended up betraying the Medina covenant, while others, in their hadiths and in Ibn Asak, there are talks about Jews who accepted him as a prophet, and many rabbis who might not have actually converted, but actually stuck and upheld their end to the Medina covenant. So you don't mention that in your video. You just overgeneralize that all the Jews were mocking Muhammad. And the fact that let's see here, the Jews rejected Jesus as well. So that's no reason that we should ignore Jesus just based on the merit of who rejects him or who doesn't. You then quote Surah 3 Ayah 118, and again you fabricate. You add the terms pagans, Jews, and Christians. But if you look in the context, it's just referring to those who reject faith, i.e. the pagans. If you look at any commentary, it's the pagans, not the Jews and the Christians. The term people of the book are not used in that passage, but you add them there. You then cite Surah 446, Surah 4160 about the Jews, and you say that you take exception to the fact that the passage reads that the Jews, let's see here, the passage reads, "For the wrongdoing of the Jews, we made unlawful for them certain good foods which have been lawful for them, and for their hindering many from Allah's way." And you say that when you read Leviticus, chapters 11, verses 1 through 46, you find that it was not because of their transgression that Moses and Aaron told them that they couldn't eat certain foods. And you say nowhere in the Hebrew scriptures does that exist. Well, I can agree with you for the most part. The idea is that, yes, in Leviticus, Moses and Aaron tell the Jews that there are unclean foods. But the motive for God telling the Jews why they can't eat these foods are actually not in the Torah. They just say the animals are unclean. So if you go to the Tafsir of Ibn Kathir, the Muslims have an opinion on why this prohibition occurred. It says, Allah states that because of the injustice and transgression of the Jews, demonstrated by committing major sins, He prohibited some of the lawful pure things which were previously allowed for them. The prohibition could be only that of decree, meaning that Allah allowed the Jews to falsely interpret their book and change and alter the information about what was allowed for them. They thus, out of exaggeration, extremism in their religion, prohibited some things for themselves. It could also mean that in the Torah, Allah prohibited things that were allowed for them. Allah said all food was lawful to the children of Israel, except what Israel made unlawful for himself before the Torah was revealed. We mentioned this ayah before, which means that all types of food were allowed for the children of Israel before the Torah was revealed, except the camel's meat and milk that Israel prohibited for himself. Later, Allah prohibited many things in the Torah. Also, Allah said in Surah Al-An'am, chapter 6, "And unto those who are Jews we forbade every animal with undivided hoof, and we forbade them the fat of the ox and the sheep, except what adheres to their backs or their entrails, or is mixed up with the bone. Thus we recompense them for the rebellion, and verily we are truthful." That means we prohibited these things for them because they deserved it due to their transgression and justice defying the messenger and disputing with them. So Allah said, "For the wrongdoing of the Jews, we made unlawful for them certain good foods which have been lawful for them, and for their hindering many from Allah's way." This ayah states that they hinder themselves and others from following the truth, and this is the behavior that they brought from the past to the present. This is why they were and are still are the enemies of the messengers, killing many prophets. They also deny Muhammad and Isa, etc., etc., etc. So this is the explanation given here. They are saying that God's motive for actually forbidding them these foods because they were transgressing in error. If you go to Leviticus, the only information given in the commentary, and I have the Torah right here with really extensive commentary, the motive is that the animals were unclean, but there's no motivation beyond that to express why these foods were forbidden. So you're right, the Quran is not saying this is actually in the Torah, it's explaining why God forbade them, certain animals and certain foods in the Torah. So you're right, it's not in the Hebrew scriptures, but that's not what the Quran is saying. It's not saying it's in the scriptures. It's saying that because it is in the scriptures, that's the motivation. You then mention chapter, let's see, 5, verse 51. I don't think you understand the context of this either. If you look at any commentary from the Muslim scholars, but I know you don't like Muslim scholars, they say that this is not saying that you can't be friends with Jews and Christians. There's nothing that prohibits Muslims from being friends with non-Muslims. There's a verse in the Quran that says, "We have not forbidden you to deal justly and kindly with people who do not mock your religion." This passage, if you look at the context in any commentary, and if you look at the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, it refers to protectors, people who are it says, do not make military allegiances with them, do not be allies with them in a military fashion, or it says, do not go for them for protection, but rather you should go for protection from other Muslims and not themselves. This was revealed during a time when many of the Jewish tribes' allegiances were in question, and therefore they could not be fully trusted. You then say that the Jews did not butcher anyone, but it was only the Muslims that killed a whole bunch of people. I really would advise you to go back and read the Torah again, because Jews will admit that in the Torah and in the book of Joshua and Judges, there are many stories where the Israelites came into the land of Canaan and butchered and killed many pagans, massacred every man, woman, and child in Jericho, etc. So for you to sit there in your video and say that Jews have not butchered or massacred anyone, that is an outright lie. Now, this is not an attack on Jews. I'm just being honest here, and I'm seeing that you are being dishonest with your information by saying the Jews are just innocent, as you portray them. In their scriptures alone, there's a completely different portrait which you neglect to mention. You then say that 929 says that the people of the book can be fought. If you look at the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, it is obvious that this verse is actually in relationship to the idea that it was revealed during a time where it allowed the Muslims to fight certain people of the book, like the Romans, the Byzantine Romans. This is not a decree to fight all people of the book. In fact, Muhammad Assad, and I have his Quran, his translation of the Quran here, it says on the commentary for this, it states clearly that that you must look at all of the fighting verses in the context without leaving any of them out. And so you must look at Surah 2, ayah 190 to 194, saying that it is only in self-defense that Muslims can fight and not for aggression. And the great Islamic thinker, Muhammad Abda, commenting on this verse, he declared, "Fighting has been made obligatory in Islam only for the sake of defending the truth and its followers. All the companions of the Prophet were defensive in character, and so were the wars undertaken by the companions in the earliest period of Islam." That's from Manar, chapter 10, verse, line 332. So even the great Islamic scholars are saying that you can't just take this verse out of context and say, look, all Muslims can now fight all Christians and Jews. You have to look at the entire rules of war it's illustrated in the Quran, and not just this one verse. But of course, you neglected to mention that. You then say that in chapter 9, verse 30, it says the Jews call Israel the son of God. And you say nowhere in the Hebrew Bible does it say that Jews call Israel the son of God. I agree with you. Again, the Quran, and if you look at the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, it is referring that Jews during the time of Muhammad called Ezra the son of God. And the next verse, verse 31, says they take many of the rabbis as their lords and give them these titles. And Allah is saying, do not call people the son of God. You then take shots at the Quran saying it's a stupid book and things like this. And I think that's really disingenuous of you to just take shots like that. It makes your argument very weak. You then say that that the Jews are 20% Nobel Prize winners, the Christians made many modern advances, and that no Muslims have attributed anything to the growth of humanity. You say that in your video. Well, I'll be posting some links in the description area where you can go and read about many Muslim thinkers that did attribute things to humanity. So I think that was very false and outright lie on your part, and almost nigh racist. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching my video. Peace be with you all.